Okay, all right. Good evening, everyone. We have a quorum of board members, so I'm calling the Wilton Board of Education regular meeting to order on Thursday, March 25th. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there public comments? Lucille?
Yeah.
Okay, before you begin, just want to remind everyone that we put a 2-minute limit on the public comments, and as a board, we do not answer directly, but we follow up when necessary. Mandy, you're good at keeping time, if you wouldn't mind just kind of keeping an eye on the 2-minute limit. I'm not sure we'll need it, but just in case.
Yep, and that's 2 minutes per
Per speaker. Yep. Okay, Lucille, you're up.
Okay, the first one is from Vanessa Elias. Dear Board of Education members, I am writing today to express my support for keeping the half-day Wednesdays remote rather than in person. Like most parents, I want my 2019 life back when my kids were in school 5 full days a week. Unfortunately, that is not our reality now. My kids are currently full in person, and I confess that on a personal level, I prefer to keep Wednesdays remote versus in person, as it allows for a midweek breather. The morning is much less rushed, and there is no stress for lunch prep, but that is not what is prompting me to write. I am writing on behalf of the hundreds of students in our district, specifically grades 3 through 12, as Miller Driscoll remote setup is different, who continue to need to be 100% remote. As a certified parent coach and mental health professional, a mental health advocate, I work with many families whose children are struggling and feeling left out, and Wednesdays have become a day of unity. One Cider Mill teacher put it best when she told me that Wednesdays are the only day of the week that her remote kids willingly put their cameras on. This is because they, for just 1 day a week, feel connected to their classmates who have gone back to school for 4 days and not isolated from their peers alone at home.
Hundreds of kids across Connecticut are hard at work as part of our Fox 60 Student News program. And this morning,
It's got a glitchy temperamental computer. Sorry about that.
And I am also writing on behalf of the students who are full in-person school 4 days or 6 out of 10. My high school daughter describes it as the 1 day each week when collaborating on assignments runs smoothly and all students can equally engage. Thank you for your service and consideration of this perspective. Best, Vanessa. And the next public comment is, I'm sorry, I have to pull it up. It's from Catherine Campbell, who is a student. 2022 is her graduation year. Hi there, I have a couple of comments to make regarding the decision around Wednesdays. My name is Catherine Campbell and I am a junior at WHS. I think the first valuable thing about keeping Wednesdays remote is the sense of unity. It's the one time the whole class is actually together and on the same page, while every other day of the day, the mix of students changes and there's so much action. This is really positive for remote students who can sometimes fall to the side and feel isolated. It's also great for teachers because it's obvious how difficult it is to manage both hybrid and in-person populations. WHS community and class community is so important, and I think that Wednesdays give us a little bit of that by making the group of students uniform. I also think the switch would be completely inefficient. All of WHS, custodians, students, teachers, admin, have barely just fallen into a schedule. The 8-day rotation works, and adding in a Wednesday would throw the whole thing off. Consistency is so key to mental health, and changing the one constant feature of this year would really throw everyone off. It would also be inefficient because of how short classes are and how many weeks we even have left. With classes being so short, there will barely be time to get there, wipe down desks, and settle down and have meaningful class time. The class just isn't long enough. There are also only around 8 Wednesdays left in the entire 2020-21 school year. Why would we throw everything out the window to impose a change most of the student body and faculty is against, especially when that change comes in so late in the year? I hope this is helpful for everyone making this decision. I have talked to a lot of my junior friends, a class of sophomores, and some teachers, and the general consensus is against this change. This year has been so tricky, but I don't think making Wednesday in person is the right decision. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to submit a comment. Catherine Campbell.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you. And thank you to both of those writers. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Brings us to reports and recognition. My report is very short. Just would like to remind all listeners and parents and everyone who follows the Board of Education that on Monday night, March 29th at 7 p.m., the Board of Finance is holding a public hearing on the Board of Education budget. The Board of Ed will present its budget, and then the public is invited to make comments. And it will be via Zoom, and there are links on the town website. So thank you. Kevin, Superintendent's report.
Great, thanks. Good evening, everybody. Please bear with me. I have a rather lengthy report this evening. First, I wanted to take a few minutes to just talk about where we are with respect to COVID-19 activity in our schools and community. Looking back over several months, the number of daily new cases has declined appreciably. On January 25th, Fairfield County registered 49 new cases. Just 2 weeks prior to that, Fairfield County had registered 80 new daily cases. Today, that number is 35.9. However, the more recent trend over the last 2 weeks has shown an increase. We hit a 6-month low on March 8th at 20 new cases per day, but have been trending upwards since then. Today's update from the Department of Public Health records Wilton at an average of 23.7 new cases per 100,000 over a 14-week period, and Fairfield County at 24.6 new cases daily over 100,000 over a 2-week period. That change represents a slight increase over the last several weeks. And we also continue to see new cases of COVID-19 in our schools. This week, we've had 2 new cases at Miller Driscoll, 3 at Cider Mill, 5 at Middlebrook, 1 at the high school, and 2 others among district staff. And you know, we had a number of cases last week as well. So given all that, my simple message for all of us and for our community and for those listening is we're not done with COVID-19. As the weather warms and restrictions ease and more people get vaccinated, I think there's going to be a growing desire to let go of some of the mitigation strategies that have served us well. We've got to continue to practice them for the time being and remain vigilant. So wearing masks, practicing social distancing, getting tested, practicing good hand hygiene, staying home when feeling ill, all contribute to reducing spread in our schools and in our community. As of March 19th, last Friday, a number of restrictions have eased in Connecticut. I think at this point, most people are aware that the travel guidance here in Connecticut is now recommended, not required. We've included that travel guidance, I think, in just about every letter sent from my office, at least for the last week. So if people have questions, I would encourage them to reference those documents and be fully versed on the travel guidance. Moving on to a more cheery item. I want to take a moment and recognize our students in the video production classes and as well as in our health classes and their teachers here at the high school, Maria Naeem, Kelly Holtz, and our SRO, Elise Ackerman, who collaborated together to deliver lessons on distracted driving to a number of our students. This morning, Fox 61 News joined the class and broadcast live from the Zellner Gallery. During the broadcast, they debuted our students' distracted driving PSAs. A number of our students submitted them as part of the DMV's Teen Safe Driving video contest. The lessons delivered by Kelly and Elise focused on distracted driving and demonstrated a field sobriety test. The lessons and the PSAs were powerful reminders of the devastation that can be wrought by even just a moment's distraction while driving. This was especially timely for these students as many of them are at or nearing driving age. So I want to take a minute. I'm going to share my screen, and there's a 49-second clip here from Fox 61 I think you'll appreciate. Let's see here. Stand by for 1 second, please. We'll get that going. Good. Okay.
So this year, hundreds of kids across Connecticut are hard at work as part of our Fox 61 Student News program. And this morning, our Student News judge, Keith McGilvery, went to see some of the budding young journalists in action at Wilton High School. Young people spent the day learning about the dangers of drunk and distracted driving. It was all captured by student reporters, and some spent the last few weeks crafting public service announcements on that topic.
The goal with this was to really spread awareness with distracted driving, and more importantly, to make other people think about how they're affecting other people, not really just themselves, but how their decisions are impacting everyone else.
Well said. More than 100 schools are taking part in our Student News program. You can catch their weekly reports Friday mornings at 7 a.m. on the Fox 61 Morning News.
All great garages start from the ground up, and that begins with a genuine Race Deck garage door. Over a decade ago, I created Race Deck, a durable, cost-effective, and
Great. So thanks for that.
That was great.
Yeah, the students did a fabulous job. I don't know if you all recognized Jake Arnowitz, and his peers have been the masterminds for the last several years around improving our television productions for the board meetings. Several of them are on now, and they've been broadcasting both to YouTube as well as to Channel 78. So they're just tremendously talented young people.
Yeah, if I could add, Kevin, we just have such a great AV program at our high school. It's really remarkable what those kids did. Last year's graduation, the way they broadcasted, the parade, it was that they really are remarkable young people, and do a phenomenal job with phenomenal instructors helping them.
Yeah, they sure do. Thanks for saying that, Glenn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
so-
you to them all, and congratulations.
Just a few other updates. Last week, I notified you that we received new information regarding the ESSER 2 grant. The state revised the allocation, and good news, Wilton's grant increased to $371,193. That was an approximate increase of about $25,399. Those funds will be committed to, as we talked about, half of them will be committed to funding the interventionist position and the half-time math specialist position at the high school in this current budget proposal. And Ann and I are still waiting on more details about the rescue plan funds, but the district is slated to see about $858,000 come to us from the federal government. And so we'll come to you probably in April with a proposal for how those funds may be allocated. And then earlier today, I sent you a copy of the town's five-year capital plan. And so Lynn had informed me that she'll be presenting that next week. So I just wanted the board to be aware of that plan. It's been in place for several years. I'm sure you noted in the plan that the two items for the schools are roof replacement and HVAC system replacement. As I said, that plan's been in place for several years, and under the current proposal for fiscal 22 beginning this summer, the front section of the roof at Cider Mill and the canopy in front of the school would be replaced. You may have noticed under HVAC, there's plans to spend $100,000 in fiscal 23. That money is dedicated to cover a forensic study of our HVAC units at Middlebrook and Cider Mill. And then beginning the following year, it's slated that over several years, the town is proposing to spend about $1 million to support the ongoing replacement of those units in those buildings. As that five-year plan rolls forward, we will roll onto it HVAC replacement at the high school. But you should feel good about the work done by Mark Esposito and our team. Our HVAC system continues to be well maintained and run very, very well. So any questions on that piece? I just wanted to make you aware.
Kevin, I'm just maybe just on the timeline for the high school HVAC. We don't need to go into details now, but I'm just wondering, that's not really on the plan yet, and should it be?
It'll roll on in subsequent years. So I talked to Chris Burney briefly about that, and the priority right now is Middlebrook and Cider Mill, and as we move forward in time, then we'll add the high school HVAC based on the age of those machines.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks.
So, all right, that wraps up my superintendent's report.
Thank you. Committee reports, policy committee, I think you guys met or not?
We actually, did we, I think we haven't met since our last meeting.
Oh, okay. All right. And I know business ops has not, teaching and learning. Okay. All right, so let's dive into the discussion items. The first one is a financial update. And I know Kevin gave us some news on federal funds. So I think this is Kevin and Ann.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
Good evening. We don't have much change from the expenditure side. What we're really waiting for is what Kevin has said is what money is coming in, so we know what we're covering. Our main goal right now is to get to all the over expenditures right now that we know. We're pulling everything from salaries to all the other items because we want to get the actuals in place so that we can start putting that request towards the Board of Finance. There's nothing major that has changed. What will change is those numbers coming in. We got a small amount, which we were waiting from FEMA on from the time period of July 1st through December 30th. We had over 400,000 in expenditures, but we only got 97 to go against it. So that we're just recently going in and we're putting against what we have. So once we pull that in and clean up all the rest of the small grants that we got, what's left is what we're covering through, we've 2 months left of the year. So there's a lot of items that we just won't spend. A lot of the training conferences, things that would normally be, that would be used in June that aren't being used now. So we're in the middle of all that right now. So that for your next meeting, we'll have a complete itemized listing of all our COVID expenditures that we would be required to go in front of the Board of Finance to request that funding.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. So I can hear that we're gearing up for that step. So yep. Thank you for tracking all of that. And it seems like the news kind of changes fairly frequently. So, yes. All right. So thank you. This leads us special education and a results of a recent survey. Andrea?
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
The story of my life. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me for a second. Okay, so these are the results of a survey that was, let's see if I can get rid of that. That we put out. The dates of the survey were late January, early February. And our goal was to ask the parents of students with disabilities who were being served either under Section 504 or under an IEP, under an individualized education plan, to ask them about their experience during COVID in terms of their communication with staff, their teamwork, how their students are doing, and give them a chance to both provide suggestions for improvements and to also recognize silver linings and certainly recognize any staff who they felt had gone above and beyond. And so here are the results. First, let me thank Lucille, who was able to pull this together for us. Why can't I move this? Let's see. Um, I'm having some difficulty making these go. Okay, here we go. All right, so first let's take a look at Miller Driscoll. The questions that were asked of everyone were the same. So we're asking, first we wanted to know at what level. As you know, with students with disabilities, we brought in students with disabilities, our most complex learners, for 4-day learning before everyone else. So we asked at the time, what model was your child participating in? 4 days, full remote, hybrid, at the time. We also asked them to identify whether they were being served under 504 or an IEP. And so you see the numbers there. And then we asked, how do you feel about your child's team? Are you a part of that team, do you feel? And you see that overwhelmingly people agree that they feel like they have a team of professionals who works well with the parents and meets their needs and works hard to address their child's needs. The parents know who to go to when they have questions and concerns. Their questions and concerns are responded to in a timely way. And if there is disagreement, they have confidence in being able to continue to discuss issues and come to reasonable resolutions of concerns. So, looking at Miller Driscoll's graphs, you see that the vast majority of responses were in the agree and strongly agree category in those areas, which I think is a testament to the work that our teachers and administrators and paras and staff are doing across the board, but certainly at Miller Driscoll. We asked about the use of Zoom for PPT and 504 meetings. And again, overwhelmingly, parents feel strongly that that the use of this technology is benefiting them and helping to serve their child's programming well. So that's something we wanted to take a look at as we come out of this pandemic phase. This may be we may continue to want to use this technology for this kind of programming. We asked about, are your children continuing to benefit from their plan and make progress on their goals and objectives? And again, overwhelmingly strongly agree. There are some students and families who are in the disagree or strongly disagree category. But for the most part, people feel like their kids are still making progress toward their goals and objectives. We asked about how parents felt their child participated in remote learning opportunities. And for the most part, parents felt that some of the time, most of the time, and always, kids were participating well. There are some students who need more support, and there are some students who are just not participating well, but they are a smaller percentage. We asked, when they're in remote learning, one of the things we wanted to know was how much support are our kids needing from parents and caregivers in terms of special education and in terms of learning when they're in remote learning. And we were, this data was, we saw as very positive, as that there was some parental support. Certainly with our youngest children, they needed more parental support. But we also had a large number of students who were able to participate independently or with minimal support. So we saw that as something we wanted to continue to capture with our kids to make sure that we were teaching to independence along the way. And the same questions are here for Cider Mill. Again, you see that we have the difference in 504 students, number of 504 students and IEP students. And again, you see a strong showing in the agree and strongly agree categories about teamwork, communication, timeliness, and the kinds of things that help parents know that they have a strong team behind them and in support of their children. Again, strong support for using Zoom to do meetings, support for lots of kids doing well and being independent, or at least working well in remote at least some of the time. but we did have some challenges in the benefiting from their IEP program. And you can see what that looks like. Middlebrook again. In Middlebrook, we had a number of parents. We also had an option for parents who were not yet identified as 504 IEP, but were somewhere in the evaluation process. So they also weighed in this survey. And again, you see a lot of agreement and support that the parents feel supported by their teams. They feel like they know who to go to, and they get responded to in a timely way. And again, we see, as you would expect with increasing age and developmental skill, you see that there's more independence. And we still have some students who struggled in the remote learning environment. But you also see a lot of support that students continue to make growth and progress. And Wilton High School. At Wilton High School, we had a larger number of parents of students with 504. About 50% of the parents of 504 participated in the survey, so that's a good number. And again, you see support here for the teamwork and the collaboration with the teachers. You see growth and independence, as you would expect at the high school level. But you also see some kids who continue to struggle. From the parents' perspective, continue to struggle. And then we had Genesis, the Genesis team. Genesis has been in 4 days a week for a long time now, so that's the only model they have. They do have some students who are fully remote, but they've been in 4 days a week since probably October. And again, we have a lot of support, even when they're in remote learning, when they've been in remote learning due to a quarantine or that kind of thing, that there is support for them and participation. And those are the results of the survey. We did have a question from one of the board members to disaggregate this data even further and to disaggregate it by 504 and IEP, so you can see the difference between the two, which we can work on and will do. The only thing I would caution you, because the numbers in 504 are so small, I think the swing of the information might be quite great. So you just have to caution the interpretation of that data when you start breaking it down into very minute response groups. But we'll get that out to you as soon as we can get back into the data and pull it together. I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any comments at this point.
Andrea, I would assume that the surveys were not anonymous, and that we have the the names, et cetera, from the parents who responded.
No, they were anonymous.
They were.
Yes.
So that makes it very difficult then to reach out to understand those that disagreed or strongly disagreed with any of the issue, with any of the areas, to contact them and find out what the issues are and how do we address those, right?
Well, each child has a team, and the teams know the children who are struggling. They know that well, and they are working with those families. We encourage families to reach out to their team, reach out to the administration, reach out to us if they're having challenges, and they do on a regular basis. And I think so. We know who's struggling, but if there are parents who have particular things they want, or particular things, and they don't feel like they're being heard, there is a chain of command to follow, and the parents.
I would imagine if,
assessment is that the parents use that chain of command and they know how to reach out if they're struggling.
okay, because overall, I think the results are really remarkable. I mean, they're phenomenal. They're great. And your team, your staff is doing, I think, a fantastic job across the system entirely, it would appear. I'm just concerned about those parents who really voice their disagreement, their displeasure or dissatisfaction, whatever it may be. And how do we stay in touch with them, and how do we move that bar, from there to agree and strongly agree?
Yeah. I would just encourage anyone who is struggling to reach out.
Okay.
And continue to communicate with us, because we can, work with you to, these problems are complex and they're not easily solvable.
Yeah.
But the likelihood of solving them increases with communication and with engagement and with trying to solve the problems. Yeah. I have to say that, I could not be, I think you've heard me say this before, and I will say it again. I could not be more proud of what the staff at the building level are doing.
Oh, it shows.
From day one of this, from a year ago, they stepped up and they stepped into serving their children and their families in ways, in incredibly creative and innovative ways. The administrators, the paraprofessionals, the related service providers, I could not be more proud to serve them. And the results that we're seeing of this survey are really a testament to the work they've been doing.
No, there's no question about that. It clearly shows. I just want to make sure that we have every means possible to reach those parents who aren't happy, that are struggling with their children for whatever the reasons are, that we can identify them and do everything we can. But overall, no, you're absolutely correct. There's no doubt about it. It's a remarkable performance.
Andrea, I just had a question. Being that some of the survey was focused on what's happened in the remote environment, if you also have a sense from families of some changes that were made and how education was provided over the last year in a positive way, and things that you might want to keep or move forward, or, for next year, if we're starting to get a sense of those types of programs or changes that may be beneficial overall to the program.
We did ask, we gave two opportunities for more narrative responses from parents. One, suggestions for improvements, and the other, we gave them an opportunity to share any compliments that they wanted to staff who they felt went above and beyond. And we had hundreds and hundreds of compliments about staffs and teams and people at the building level who had just taken everything to another level for them and really supported their families. It was quite a testament to many staff members who have really made a difference in the lives of children and families throughout this crazy time we've been in. And so we've shared that with, the buildings, and so that those teachers can get a sense of what they've accomplished. And also, even in the areas of suggested for improvements, there were a lot of positive comments about things that, like the Zoom PPT, or like having opportunities to have breakout sessions with the paras during some of the high school classes to give a little extra support. And some of those opportunities, the work that some of our social workers and psychologists and school counselors have done just to stay connected, the work of our IT department in doing some parent training work so that the parents understand and can maneuver more effectively in Schoology. There were a lot of kudos given to different things that parents felt were very helpful to them, and things they would like to see continue as we move back into a more COVID recovery phase. So we have a lot of suggestions that we're mulling through and looking at and thinking about.
Great.
We haven't yet had, what we haven't had yet is time as a department to actually reflect on what we've done for the past year, because we're still in it. The pandemic isn't over, so we haven't had that moment to reflect and really take a look at and what we've accomplished And we look forward to having that opportunity with the department to take a breath and reflect, because there's so much good that we want to take with us as we recover from the pandemic.
Hey, Andrea, I think we should take a moment to celebrate two of our friends since they're with us this evening.
Well, they're going to do ESY, so I will absolutely do that part. When you're ready to ESY, I will introduce, are we ready to move on to the ESY?
I just wanted to say that overall the results were unbelievably positive. I was very heartened by that, and I think we can all just take, just sort of celebrate that for a bit. So please extend our thanks and appreciation to the entire support services staff. Also, the results seem to be sort of encouraging as we look forward to next year, and just how much challenge we are facing. I mean, we will face a challenge, but starting from a pretty good place or a very good place during this pandemic is amazing. So again, thanks to everyone. My only observation is it seemed as if as the students got older, a greater proportion of them seemed to experience some difficulties in this kind of remote environment. So that was just sort of something I noticed, that the struggling students, in terms of being a proportion of the whole, seemed to grow a little bit.
Yep.
And then my only question is, can you just tell us what percentage of the parents responded?
We had a little less than 50% of parents of children with IEPs participate, and a little less than 40% of the parents of children with 504.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
So they were good. From a percentage standpoint, it's actionable data.
Yes. Yeah. In terms of our response rate and in general for surveys. But anyway, so thank you again. Very, very positive news overall for the most part. So congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So shall we move on to the extended school year?
Yes. So tonight we have two extraordinary women who have been a part of leading this COVID response, and they're going to present about our ESY. ESY stands for Extended School Year. Under IDEA, students with disabilities, we have to make a decision about whether or not they require extended learning opportunities in order to receive an appropriate education. And when they do, it's called ESY, Extended School Year. And so I'm going to introduce you to Sharon D'Angelo, who is our Assistant Director of Student Services for Pre-K through Grade 5, and Melissa Barrett, who is our Assistant Director of Student Services for Grade 6 through age 22, and the Community Steps program. They have been extraordinary during this year, meeting the needs of staff members, students, and families, and we couldn't do this work without them. So I'm going to thank them for their work and recognize how excellent they are and what they bring to the district. And then I'm going to turn it over to them to talk about ESY services.
Thank you, Andrea. Of course, thank you everyone for having us tonight. And we want to give a special thanks to Andrea for being our fearless leader through this year, starting with the pandemic last year and all the way through. I don't know what we could have done without you, so thank you for that. We are here tonight to talk briefly about extended school year. We have started our planning very early this year. We plan for extended school year all year. We start in September, even though we know it's 10 months away. We hit the ground running with it. We have an early closure this year, so June 11th, I believe, and we set our dates for ESY starting with June 28th this year. So we're at the end of June, and we go straight through August 5th for our most significant learners, our intensive learners, our community steps program, and our collaborative center students will have June 28th through August 5th. We have a unique situation this year where we have the 4th of July smack dab in the middle of our ESY. And because of the district closure, we do not have services that week. So it will be a total of 5 weeks for our intensive learners and our tutorial students, and our preschool students will have a 4-week program. So their program runs June 28th through July 29th. And because they have that week off in the middle, it's a 4-week program. So we have our dates set, and we have our recommendations coming in all year long for the students that qualify for our services. And they run from intensive services right through tutorial in reading, math, and writing. We have itinerant services for speech, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. And our other partner in crime, who is not here tonight, Bernadette Hess, works with us to create all of this magic. And in addition to that, we have our Summer Fun program. And that is our program where we invite our typical peers to come and be part of our summer fun. And we get to kind of designate each week a different theme. Our typical peers come and they're part of this program. We have our Wilton teachers. We have already hired our Wilton teachers to be running all of this week-to-week fun that we're going to have. And the typical peers provide the social models that we need for some of our students who are lacking in that area. Our themes this year are Olympics. We had originally designated the Olympic theme for last year, and that was canceled and pushed to this year. So our Olympic theme will be running. We have all kinds of outdoor activities planned. We're going to try to keep as much outdoors as we can. And together with our tutorial piece, it's a very well-rounded program. We are located at Miller Driscoll once again for pre-K through 5. So all of our students pre-K through 5 will be attending their summer services at Miller Driscoll. And then all of our secondary services under Melissa will be, I believe, the high school, but I'm going to let her talk more about that because I know it's difficult with the secondary. We kind of go back and forth sometimes with Middlebrook and high school, but Melissa will talk more about that piece of it. And we're just incredibly excited because we started our program 2 years ago where we invited typicals in, and it was a slow start because it was brand new. And then we had our COVID summer and we were only able to bring in certain students. So this year we sent our brochure out and we already have almost full weeks. We have such a great outpouring from the community, which is a testament, I think, to, you know, the year that they've had, the safety that they feel coming into our schools, the way that we're using our PPE and everything, and really keeping our mitigated strategies going. I think everyone feels really comfortable sending their kids. So we can't believe how many kids we already have from the community signed up to go. I want to give a plug and say we still have some spots left. The brochure is out. We've emailed it to everybody. So for the elementary portion, please come join our summer fun. It's a great opportunity to help have your child come and enjoy what we have to offer, as well as help our students with disabilities. For secondary, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Barrett. She has a little bit of a different, one more thing I wrote down. I just want to mention, we are all in person. I know there has been some question, are we offering remote? Are we in person? For elementary, we are in person. And there may be some tweak to that for secondary, but again, I will let Melissa talk to that.
Thank you. To echo what Sharon said, a thank you to Andrea, who's really led us through this work. And to think a year ago, we were at Sharon's kitchen table thinking we were going to be closed for a few weeks. So it's been quite a journey and would be lost without these two. Our ESY at the secondary level is running the same time frame that Sharon mentioned. So our students with more complex needs will be in the 5-week program, and our tutorial students will be in the 4-week program. We did send out a parent survey because at the secondary level, we did have some pretty good attendance with our tutorial students being virtual, which isn't always the case. So we did send out a parent survey to gain feedback on whether or not the virtual services was something that students from our tutorial population wanted to still engage in. And while I think it might have been more convenient, parents did feel like the in-person learning was more meaningful from a vast majority. So our services are going to be all in person as well. For some of our students with more complex needs who need a wider constellation of services, we are going to be running some enrichment classes with some of our community partners. So we will have a social kitchen 1 week, a neuro taekwondo 1 week, a gardening club 1 week, and a community art project that we're actually partnering with our media center with, which we're pretty excited about. And then we have some of our top inclusion models, best buddies, and some students from National Honor Society coming to fill their community service hours with us over ESY. So we're really excited to have them on site with us this year. We will be at the high school. We're also going to have, as we always do, speech and language, PT and OT to help with some of those services. And we're going to continue our partnership with Norwalk Community College for our students in our Community Steps program, keeping all things crossed, hoping that we can be on campus. They've been virtual this year. And then continuing as things open up to expand our community program. We've been very creative this year, keeping those students engaged and safe. So we're really looking forward to having more flexibility with them over the summer. And then our high school staff is really going to be working on some parent workshops around transition in terms of the Big D transition, so post-high school, whether that is a community-based program, a college, certificate, trade school, but putting together some workshops and sending those out to families to have set for the year. So we're really looking forward to that work, which is new. And that wraps up most of our secondary ESY.
Sharon, would it be, I would love to see the brochure that you sent out. Can you email that to us? Yeah.
Absolutely. We absolutely will.
Yeah, I think it would be fascinating to look at.
Yeah, sounds fun. Yeah.
You're going to want to participate, Glenn.
Pardon?
You're going to want to participate.
Oh, I'm
if
sure.
You do, you get a t-shirt.
Yeah,
you get a free t-shirt, yes. And I have to say, I invite you all to stop by this summer. It really is a lot of fun, and we're really looking forward to being able to have everyone back this year.
Yeah, I'd love to see the brochure.
That'd be great.
See what you're doing. I think it would be great for us to get better educated about what you're doing.
Yeah, they all sound like very engaging programs, and I'm sure the participation, will be enthusiastic. So great designs. I'm assuming, Andrea, we have the resources for all the programs built in for the budget. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, anyway, thank you for those great descriptions. Other comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you. You've got a lot of fine tuning and remaining planning to do, but it sounds like it's a wonderful, wonderful plan afoot. Thank you. Okay. Look at. All right, Kevin, you were going to introduce or discuss the blueprint to transform Connecticut public schools.
Correct, thanks. I'll just take a couple of minutes on this. Hopefully you all have seen this. You either received it electronically or picked up a hard copy.
Yeah.
This document is the CAPS blueprint to transform Connecticut's public schools. CAPS is the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents. CAPS is not a state agency, but rather the primary advocacy and support organization for Connecticut's superintendents. The document is the culmination of 2 years' effort to design a comprehensive, long-term set of recommendations for addressing the educational and fiscal needs of Connecticut's school districts. The document contains 30 recommendations that address issues like funding, equity, teaching and learning, student well-being, curriculum and development, and teacher certification, as well as some proposals to reduce regulatory barriers that can impede districts' progress, things like mandated training requirements and the like. Some of the most substantial recommendations in the document speak to issues around funding. One strong recommendation is that the state fully fund its special education obligation. There's a second that speaks to increasing the ECS funding and making that formula more predictable. As well, another funding recommendation to provide additional grant support targeted toward programs that are intended to improve or address student mental health initiatives. I'm not requesting any action of the board on this item, but wanted to, one, just make you aware of the document and encourage you to take some time to read through and give some consideration to the recommendations contained therein. CAPS advocates very strongly at the state capitol and in the governor's office has presented this to all of the legislators and legislators in the state, and is hoping that the recommendations will be given some serious consideration. But it's an important document, and I think given the many concerns around public education across the state, the folks that worked on this really did a fine job of kind of capturing the collective interests of superintendents and public school districts across Connecticut. So that's all. I just wanted to make you aware.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, Kevin, will you follow up at some point with what you think are the biggest possible implications, you know, that we might want to pursue or follow up with? You know, yeah. All right, thank you. Okay, that leads us to our action items. The first of which is the Wednesday learning model. Kevin, I'm going to turn that one over to you.
Great,
I know a lot of thought and work has gone into this.
Yeah, I'll tell you quite candidly, coming to some thoughts and recommendations, this has been one of the, I think, the most challenging questions that I've wrestled with this year. And, you know, I could probably argue against myself on all of the recommendations. So just to orient us all, at the last board meeting, you asked that I gather some more information and consider further the recommendation to return to in-person learning on Wednesdays. I've done that, and here I'm going to outline my thoughts. First, I think regardless of the learning model, we do intend to retain the shortened instructional day for the remainder of the year. That was a commitment we made to our teachers at the very beginning, and it was intended to provide them with additional planning time as they navigated a new environment and so many new tools. This time has been and continues to be invaluable for our staff. The administrators will all concur. We've talked about it at length over the year that the planning time on Wednesdays is really tremendously valuable for all of our staff. So after speaking to a number of our instructional staff, our PTA presidents a couple of weeks ago, as well as carefully reading through all of the written correspondence, and then subsequently distributing surveys to family and staff, I have shifted my own thinking on Wednesdays. And my shift is really, the shift in my thinking rather is driven largely by the input we receive from our staff. And so, you know, here they are. One, beginning the Wednesday after spring break, we will, I would recommend that we return our Miller Driscoll students to onsite on Wednesdays. We return onsite on Wednesdays any of those students with complex needs that necessitate in-person support, and I would defer to Andrea and her team to make those decisions. And then we retain remote learning for students in Sutter Mill, Middlebrook, in the high school. And then the last piece here, and again, I could really argue against myself on this one. I am asking that we talk about returning all staff to onsite on Wednesdays, and you know, I'll speak about that kind of toward the end here, and I'll explain to you kind of why I have that suggestion and you know why I'm torn about it. So I think, you know, first it's important to note that, like with every other proposed instructional model change, there are benefits and drawbacks to every option. And certainly in this case, that's what has made coming to some recommendations so challenging. There is not a single option that serves all interests, and there are certainly many competing perspectives on this question. The recommendation for Miller Driscoll students results primarily from these two factors. First, developmentally, these students are our least independent, and they seem to struggle the most with remote learning. And then second, unlike our other three schools, the teachers in this building have not been obligated to teach in the hybrid for most of the school year. Classes at Miller Driscoll right now are either fully in person or we have 3 fully remote classes running. The recommendation to retain remote Wednesdays for Cider Mill, Middlebrook, and the high school is also a result of several factors. First, the return to in-person learning would result in a loss of instructional time, primarily at Middlebrook. Cider Mill would lose some time to transitions, and the high school would lose some time in the afternoon. And it wouldn't be so much a loss of instructional time, but a loss of the opportunity to provide some programs and a requirement to shuffle the schedule around to make things work there. So at the high school, in the afternoons on Wednesdays, they run what they refer to as personalized learning time. And the feedback that we got from staff, from students, from a number of parents, all indicated that that time is very, very well used and relied upon. The high school also launched earlier this winter a program they refer to as ACE. There are about 25 students currently participating, and these are some of our students who are academically at risk. And so staff is using the time on Wednesday afternoon to reach out and exclusively support those students. Many of our teaching staff spoke in very strong favor of the benefits of remote Wednesdays. They noted factors like having one day in the week where they're not managing a hybrid environment and the benefits conferred by having all students in a single location, in Zoom and in front of them on a screen. Teachers reported that they feel more effective when students are in a single place and they're not challenged to have to manage all of the hardware and the, accompanying, idiosyncratic issues that crop up with cameras, microphones, et cetera, that they have to manipulate in order to effectively manage the hybrid classroom. Teachers also spoke about the instructional opportunities afforded by remote Wednesdays, including the use of breakout rooms for small group instruction and the ability to engage in activities that they otherwise can't engage in person. And so one of the examples that was presented to me was the opportunity for the Cider Mill world language teachers to have the kids sing. Right now there's not enough room in the classroom to enable them to sing in classrooms. Teachers, and especially those teachers at Wilton High, remark that Wednesdays provides the only opportunity during the week that they have to work with students individually. And many staff noted the benefit for students and for themselves of not having to wear masks. This idea of a mask break came up very heavily through all of the feedback we received, whether it was from staff, students, or from families. We also heard quite a bit of feedback from staff, particularly at Cider Mill and Middlebrook, about the time and energy required to maintain the constant vigilance supporting our mitigation strategies, and just the how taxing that was, and the fact that Wednesdays offered a respite from that. In reviewing the parent surveys, we heard quite a bit about, some of the potential issues that some parents may face with another schedule change, and then, worries about pick up and drop off on a shortened day, especially if parents had children at multiple schools. We heard a little bit about, some problems potentially, with work because the schedules are now established. So, I thought that feedback was important. Also, it was interesting within the parent feedback, and there was a little bit, among some of our teachers as well, that if Wednesday was going to be a full day, they would be in support of having students back on site. But because it's a shortened day and, all of, what that means with a shortened day, that they would elect to have the remote option instead. So when we surveyed, we did learn that the majority of teachers at the 3 upper schools favored retaining remote Wednesdays. The staff at Miller Driscoll was more evenly split. They were, I don't know, 42-46, one way or the other. Among the parents, the majority of the Miller Driscoll parents favored returning students to school on Wednesdays. At the other 3 schools, the results were more mixed. So at Cider Mill, 68 or, about 2/3 of the parents who responded favored a return to in-person on Wednesdays, but about 32% or so did not. At Middlebrook and at the high school, the split was, much more even. So at Middlebrook, about 55% of those who responded supported a return to in-person on Wednesdays, while 45% did not. And at the high school, 49% favored returning students to in-person on Wednesdays, while 51% did not. And I read through the comments from, all of our staff and our families, and, the parent comments were interesting. Thematically, the folks that were really advocating for students to come back on site, were generally kind of echoing two sentiments. One, the sentiment was, hey, listen, it's time to get back to normal here and let's go. And then the second sentiment was really about the struggle that their children were having maintaining engagement in a remote environment. Among a number of those families that responded that they would like to have their kids back in person, they also noted that if we had to keep remote, they'd be okay with it, and they were looking forward to kind of more normal routine next year. Of the families that were advocating to stay remote on those Wednesdays, there were many who identified, they appreciated the, what was kind of described as a break in the week where kids didn't have to wear the mask. They didn't have to deal with all of the mitigation strategies in school. Others, had noted that their students were in a good routine and, managing and functioning, effectively. So they felt like it was, they were able to continue for the remainder of the school year. So, with respect to having all teachers on site, and this is, I will tell you, again, not to be repetitive, but I've really kind of gone back and forth on this one because I can, argue it, I think, both ways. In suggesting that we have all of our staff on site, to me, it really boils down to a very simple question of equity. If we're going to require that our Miller Driscoll teachers be in the classroom and be on site, then it seems to me to be fair to ask that we have all of our teachers on site. Doing that as well, again, if we're looking at bringing in some other students with some more complex needs, those will be there on site. And so, they'll be able to deliver in-person instruction. I think, there's no added instructional benefit to having teachers on site if the kids are going to be remote at Starter Mill, Middlebrook, and the high school. And so I don't think we can make an instructional argument of why that's better. And certainly, teachers in their feedback that they shared highlighted, other benefits of being remote and not on site, and is, just in part, many of them commented on, just the opportunity to have a little bit of a stress relief in a very stressful time in a very stressful environment. And I think that's a fair perspective. But I just personally struggle with asking one segment of our staff to do something and then allowing another segment of our staff to remain at home. So I'm stuck on that one. What else? All right, so I'll just kind of tick off some other considerations here, so you can get a kind of full sense and flavor for the various considerations. I think it's been noted in a number of places. When we look at the balance of the number of Wednesdays, we're talking about 9 half Wednesdays. And so I think it is fair to say if we were contemplating this decision earlier in the year, I'm sure would most likely be making a different recommendation. Some of our staff suggested, and I heard this in the parental comments as well, that Wednesdays provides equity for those students who are fully remote. We also heard from a few students who shared that they feel like they're most part of our fully remote students, that is, that they're most part of the class on Wednesdays. Another number of teachers shared that Wednesdays is the only day of the week where students get to see each other. In many cases, on the other 4 days, The camera is either trained on the teacher or the teacher's smartboard. And so, unless they're working in a small group breakout room, students don't actually get to see each other. There was a couple of you had sent me some questions. I emailed those to you early, but I'll just review them here. So there was a question about how many students participate in the personalized learning time on Wednesday afternoons. The high school administration surveyed the teachers, and the average range in teacher responses was somewhere from 3 to 12, with highs around 25. And the average duration of those sessions were about 30 minutes per either individual or group. There were 25 students who are currently being served by the ACE program. The current in-person class sizes at the high school right now, Don reported, range between 12 and 15 students per day on site. Similarly, Middlebrook attendance is actually pretty high. I checked in with Jory, and I've been over there a number of times myself to see it. Those classrooms are either full or pretty close to it. There was a question about, cleaning on Wednesdays, and this was another comment that came up both among the staff and a number of our families about the appreciation for having the time to do some additional cleaning on Wednesdays. Jose has reported to me throughout the year that he does value the time to clean the building and allow the air to circulate when the building's not occupied on Wednesdays. But he did develop a plan that I feel good about to address the cleaning on other days besides Wednesdays. He was planning on shuffling staff and creating an extra shift, and as well utilizing Saturdays and time over the break to do some cleaning as necessary. There was a question about in-school COVID transmission, and we think we've had 2 instances of in-school transmission this year. One, the first, Miller Driscoll back in November, December timeframe between 2 individuals. And then more recently at Sutter Mill, as you know, we had a number of cases in Cannondale, and we think there was probably an instance of in-school transmission that may have impacted at least 3 individuals there. Still, the majority of cases as we conduct our contact tracing seem to stem, from in-home transmission, especially as it impacts our students. And just, I think another data point that I'm aware of across the year, the staff absenteeism has been lowest on Wednesdays. Even when we've had students in person, we've still been plagued with quarantines and an ongoing substitute teacher shortage. I think, it's important to say that, we as a school district have been very flexible in allowing staff to work from home, and this has certainly provided an instructional advantage. Maria can, provide us some more details on that as she works very closely with HR directors across the region. And I guess just the very last thing I would say here, and it's not a primary factor at all in my thinking, but I am cognizant of the values conferred by remote learning, and also cognizant that it's an opportunity that we may wish to retain even as we move out of the pandemic. We've invested significantly in the model because we had to, but there are clearly evident silver linings. For example, we know that there are students who have flourished in the online environment. We have new opportunities for students and staff who may have to be episodically absent because of a personal circumstance, an injury or other, that prohibits them from being physically on site but still able to engage. And then there's the matter of snow days and other inclement weather days. While I certainly received feedback that many appreciated a snow day this year, I'm also very mindful of the problems that ensue when we have multiple snow days like we did several years ago. And similarly, aware that optimal learning time, happens, in the first part of the year, and the further we get into June, we just, even though we may be in session, the quality of the time is not the same as it is earlier in the year. And so I think there's a strong benefit to, remote learning to preserve our schedule. So I'll stop there. I know it's a lot of information.
Can I ask a question? Yeah, it's time for questions and comments. So go ahead, Jen.
Can we just be clear on what we are hopefully voting on? Are we voting to only focus on bringing Miller Driscoll back and the rest will stay remote? Is that the new proposal and that's what we're voting on?
So if you were going to ask me to recommend a motion, it would be that. And I think, we need to discuss, how we like to manage staff. And so I'll be interested to hear your feedback about, just your own perceptions about, do you see an equity issue in the way that I see it about having some teachers on site and others at home on Wednesdays or not? And, what's your comfort level there?
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Kathy about Miller Driscoll coming back. Your view and is it right step to take?
I definitely think it's the right step to take for the students. Absolutely.
Okay.
So our kids have the most difficulty participating remotely. We also have a lot of students with some very complex needs who, oftentimes can't participate remotely at all. So we have staff coming into the building to try to even work with some of those kiddos for short amounts of time on Wednesday. So from a student perspective, absolutely, I think it's the right. I think the kids need to be back in school on Wednesday.
Well, the kids need to be back in school full time every day, but that's just not going to happen, and that's okay. I mean, it is what it is what it is. Kevin, I think that it's a good compromise. I'm really torn, as you are, obviously, about having the requirement for all the teachers to be on site. I just don't know. Yeah, and I guess I'll have to bow to your judgment on that one. But I fully support keeping Wednesdays as remote for the other three buildings, without question. The correspondence we've received has been overwhelming in that regard, and some really valid, some extensive correspondence, lengthy correspondence from parents and from students. I was surprised to see how engaged the students were in supporting staying remote. I was really surprised at that, but I'd say 90% of the correspondence we received has been to keep the status quo for the balance of this year. Next year is another, come next September, hopefully we will be back in full time, 5 days a week as normal. That's the expectation and that's the hope. But I would support your recommendation. And as I said, I'm torn about the teachers, but I understand your position on that. I think it's probably the right one to take. And they have all the facilities in the building to do the remote on Wednesdays. The equipment's all there, everything's set up, and I think it would be probably more beneficial from an educational standpoint and productive for them to be in there using the equipment that we've provided that's available to them to do that remote on Wednesdays.
Okay. Jen?
I guess my concern with this is if you are no longer bringing in students at Cider Mill, Middlebrook, and the high school, how do you bring back the IEP students who need the support and have them be the only kids in the building while all their peers are at home?
Yeah, so I think there was, when I put that in a survey, I think people misunderstood what I was proposing. And I'm not suggesting that, we bring back every kid with an IEP. That to me doesn't make any sense at all. But we know that, and certainly Melissa, Sharon, and Andrea can give voice to this. We have some of our kids, and, I'm thinking it's a relatively small population of kids who have really, really complex needs and just have the difficulty accessing their education remotely. And so those are the kids that I had in mind as we among the leadership team has discussed, who really has to be on site here and why. So ask Andrea, if she wants to weigh in here on that.
Yes, there are, we have a small subset of students who require very directed face-to-face close contact instruction. I believe early on in the pandemic, we talked about, there are kids we need to be in very close physical proximity to maintain a level of engagement that allows learning to happen. They're often kids who require very high levels of adult support, whether it's paraprofessional support, related services, OT, PT, things that really can't be done well in a remote environment in order to maintain the level of engagement that you get where you see learning. They also need a lot of structure and repetition, and the break in the structure, Monday, Tuesday, break on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, changes things. You lose momentum during the week for some of these kids. You never hear me do the all kids this or all kids that. Special ed is about the individual decision-making about a child and their needs. But we do have this small subset of students who has found remote learning challenging. Their parents have found the level of support they need at home to be challenging. And so we would want to structure and create a day that's meaningful for them on Wednesday. They would not necessarily have time with non-disabled peers on Wednesday in the model suggested, but we could make adjustments to different schedules for their more individualized, specialized instruction time that might actually free up some time on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for them to spend more time interacting with their non-disabled peers. Typically, their IEPs are very rich with direct service. And so we want to make sure that we would utilize the time effectively, but allow for a structure that makes sense to help move them forward in learning.
Would this be voluntary for them? I mean, you may recommend it, but it would be ultimately the parents' decision for those particular students?
Ultimately, it would be a decision made by the PPT team.
Okay.
Certainly, if a parent felt, the parent still has the option to choose remote learning that the governor gave them. So parents can still choose remote learning. We'll still have some students in full remote learning, but we'd like to be able to have the option to bring more students to that direct service if we could.
I'm still in the camp that all of our kids should go back. So I understand that's kind of been taken off the table and that we're focusing on something different right now. I guess going back to those students, I don't want it to, we already know they learn differently, and kind of making that more apparent is not what I want to have happen because of this change. So if it became a situation where they're going to be the only kids in the building, then kind of like you said, if there was a way to redirect their services so that they are getting one-on-ones or getting whatever they need and removing them from the classroom for that shortened day, I'd almost rather see that so that it's not just so they don't, feel different or whatnot. And I don't know how you guys feel about that or how parents feel about that, but that would just be my point of view from all of it. And I guess my other comment too, if we're going back to staff, and if we're truly not talking about bringing back our 3 schools, I guess when I think about what's been fair this year, I don't think anything's been fair this year. I don't think, we had some teachers in a hybrid and some not in a hybrid, and we had some teaching 4 days and some not teaching 4 days. And I think it's hard for me to say that if I thought bringing back all the teachers would make it equitable and everybody would think that was fair, I'd be in favor of it. But what we're hearing is that teachers don't feel like things have been equitable all year long. So why throw this in there and make them go into the building if, the students aren't going to be there anyway? So I guess if that's really what we're thinking about, then I would be in favor of just letting them stay home.
Okay. Ruth or Mandy?
Yeah, Deb, I have to jump off to go grab my son. I sent you a text, but
right. Sorry about that. Yeah,
that's okay. No, I agree with Jen. I think it'd be nice to have the teachers stay home, but I also agree that there's been nothing fair and equitable about any of this year. So at the end of the day, I support Kevin's decision.
Okay. And Ruth?
So I am torn on the equity piece.
About staff?
About staff.
Okay, all right.
I do, like Jen, do feel, and I think the school will certainly have the kids' best interests in mind when it comes to how some of the kids with complex needs are brought back in on Wednesday and how they spend their time, and making that time that is not, doesn't further make anyone feel singled out in any increased way. I agree that nothing about this year has been fair or equal across the board, and that there were teachers who came back sooner and did 4 days sooner than others. And if you look at the continuous cycle of a year, there are different modes of operation that reflect different needs of different kids in different buildings. And I would be okay saying to the teachers that if they want to stay home, they can on Wednesday. If their students aren't coming in, they can stay home as well.
Okay. All right. What I'm thinking is that maybe we divide this into a couple of votes. One is about the kids, and the other is, let's talk a little bit more about the staff. But let's at least clear up one issue about bringing only Miller Driscoll students on site on Wednesdays, but not Cider Mill, Middlebrook, or the high school. So I think, why don't we try to sort of decide that one, sort of support or not support Kevin's recommendation, and then we can get into the nuances of the faculty. I think they're slightly different, and I don't want to kind of muddy the waters and make anybody feel like they have to like both of them when maybe they don't. Are there any other questions or comments from the kids from the plan for the individual, the students at each individual school?
No.
Okay, I think it fits our model that we have all along said where we would differentiate school by school based on the needs. And I think Kevin's point, everyone's point about how young those little kids are, and the fact that teachers do not teach 2 different platforms in that school. I think that makes me comfortable there. I also understand the frenetic schedule that can come with a shortened day, certainly at Middlebrook and the high school. Anything that has people lose instruction makes me nervous. I just will throw this out as a suggestion to think about further. I would like to think that Wednesdays, remote or otherwise, be perhaps used for some of the standardized testing that is coming up in the spring. I think what we need to do is protect our 4 days that we have kids on site, and to the extent possible, not disrupt those. So to the extent that we can move our testing to Wednesdays, remote or otherwise, I think would best protect the other 4 days. That would just be a suggestion, and not to be, really decided or anything like that tonight. That's up to the staff, but that's would be a suggestion. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to bring the Miller Driscoll students on site on shortened Wednesdays, but to leave Cider Mill, Middlebrook, and the high school on its current remote day schedule for students?
So moved.
Thanks, Glenn. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, there you have it. Okay, so the next question is about the staff. And I just think, I guess, Kevin, you hear us saying, that we trust your judgment, which we certainly do. But I hear that you're conflicted about it.
Yeah, would it be helpful to hear from any of the other?
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, in this era of, something Andrea said for the special needs students, that I think applies to everyone, that perhaps there isn't a blanket way of doing anything, especially this year. And in the absence, or maybe, in the absence of any instructional, educational benefit to bringing teachers on site, just as a requirement, I'm not sure that's a direction that we need to go in. And I'm kind of curious that what do the teachers as a group think? Are there any union issues involved? And perhaps, I guess there are several unions, but is that a decision that, they should discuss and come back with a recommendation?
Well, Maria spoke with Andrew earlier today. So you want to just share what you learned?
So, there's no doubt that this is a complex issue. And I think, like many have recognized, there were the issues on both sides of it. From a wellness standpoint, I think we all recognize that there have been benefits for staff and for students this year with the remote days that we've had, which was really part of the reason that the district went to remote options for staff at the very beginning of the year before many other school districts even chose to do that. We've spoken to the union about this potential issue for some time now, maybe about a month. We've spoken about it a few different times. I want to be clear, we've spoken to the union leadership. We met with the executive board. I spoke with the union president earlier today, again, about it. And the union's position, this is the teachers union, by the way, continues to be that they believe in full remote for everyone. And so while, I presented the possibility that some might be in and others may not be, their stance is really that the expectation is that remote would remain for everyone for the remainder of the year. It's hard because had teachers in at different points in the year when other staff have not been in. And we've heard from some that it seemed equitable that they would come in when others wouldn't. And I think teachers have always done the right thing for their students. And so even when they maybe haven't felt that it was equitable, they've just done it because they're wanting to do what's best and right for their kids. And I think teachers will always continue to do that because they're very professional and committed. But there's an element where people sometimes don't feel good about having to do things or not having options that maybe their counterparts might. Now, with that said, we recognize the other side of it, which is that we'd be asking staff to come in that would not necessarily be required to work with students. And so we recognize for those staff, that doesn't necessarily feel good. I do think that there could be potentially a union issue if we require, essentially a quarter of the union to come on site and we give the remainder of that union the option of being home. And then the other piece is that we have another union, our paraprofessional union, where that could be a real issue as well, because we would be having essentially a quarter of that staff home. And I think that could be a real issue with that staff as well. So we don't know necessarily what they are until and if this decision is made. Because as I said, as recently as a few hours ago, the WBA's leadership stance was that the request is to be remote for everyone, and that they haven't surveyed the full staff, but they did speak to the executive board and some building reps, and that was the stance as of a few hours ago.
Okay, well, that just doesn't really answer the question for where we are right now. The question really, has to do, as you know, with the differentiation between requiring all staff to be on site or the ones who need to be on site and the others have discretion.
Right.
All
and we
right.
did ask for them to weigh in on that. But...
Oh, I know. I know. I just wondered if there was some clear-cut, resolution there. Are there any
earlier in the year when you discussed these issues and it was clear that we were going to be making decisions on a school by school basis and that those decisions may have been that a school would be in 4 days a week and maybe the 3 other schools not for longer periods of time than we've had back and forth and not knowing. Was there any ever any of these discussions then? Was there ever any concerns about equity then, or about how teachers would be able to and where they would be able to perform their job?
You know, there have been, I wouldn't say there have been any formal conversations about it. Again, the teachers are very committed and very professional, and they've, you know, if they've been asked to come in, they come in because they understand that their kids need them. But we have heard from people more informally who've said, you know, hey, if we're coming back in the spring, we should all be coming back. And you know, I will defer to the other building principals maybe about what they've heard from, you know, what they heard from staff at different points in the year. I did hear some things, again, informally. I think people did what they felt they needed to do and should be doing for their kids. And those were relatively short periods of time. With that said, this is a relatively short period of time too. We're looking at 9 days,
Right.
you know, over 9 weeks, but it's, you know, it's 9 days. And so that's what makes this so complex, is you see both sides of it. But we have heard from staff who've said, if we're coming back, we should all be coming back. And I don't think that staff necessarily want to make a decision for what their colleagues are doing. But I do recognize that some, you know, have felt that it's unfair if they don't have the option. And so I'll, you know, open it up to the other principals to share maybe if they've heard things from staff members on either side of it.
Well, I'm going to share because my staff are the staff coming back. And no matter what model we were in the whole year, staff came to school 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and they worked remotely Wednesday. So no matter what model the schools were in, all of the staff came in on the 4 days and all of the staff worked remotely on Wednesday. So it wasn't school by school. And I think my staff would be very upset. So.
I'm sorry, Kate, your staff would be very upset if they had to come in 5 days now and the other 3 schools didn't.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what she's saying. Okay, there's certainly a logic there. Okay, so to be honest, Kevin, it's, yes, the board could, you know, sort of take an advisory kind of vote tonight, but I'm wondering if it is even a board issue. I think you've heard us say that we trust your judgment. You know, and the idea of fairness versus differentiation, you know, based on instructional needs of the, you know, of teachers being on site. Is there a requirement? You know, is there anything to be gained by a board vote, or can we leave that to be an administrative decision?
No, you can certainly give it back to me, and the deliberation is helpful. I'm just going to tell you, if you're handing it back to me, I'm going to take just a bit more time to, you know, resolve.
Lucky you. Yeah, yeah.
And I'm happy to. I understand, and certainly you're, you know, now walking in my shoes a little bit and understand the complexity around the challenge here, but I can handle it.
Yeah, I don't think it's that we don't want to make a recommendation or whatever, but clearly there are multiple sides to it. But it's not a programmatic or a policy or a financial, you know, or even a what's best for kids kind of question. Or what's best for the district. So this is kind of an administrative matter from my point of view. But that doesn't matter. Other comments from board members, you know, if I think you're hearing.
I just want to reiterate that we do trust your judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I agree as well. No, I agree.
Okay, thanks, Gretchen. Okay, all right, so the school schedules for kids are set. Obviously, the requirements will follow for the staff, and then the other staff, Kevin, you'll make your best judgment. Yeah, and I'm not sure, maybe it's an all or nothing thing. If we go back to investigating whether assessments should be done on Wednesdays. Maybe that will require some staff to come in for that, to deal with those kinds of things. So it'll end up being more of a flexible kind of Wednesday. Who knows? But we trust your judgment.
Okay, thanks.
All right, or no thanks, I guess. All right, so that brings us to an Algebra 1 course, which might be a little bit easier to talk about. Kevin or Trudy, did you want to say anything else? I know that you have described the course before and we've seen the 6141, but any other comments?
No, I think it's a good proposal. It's a sound course. It's targeting some kids who we think need some additional time in algebra. It's a relatively small group, and I think this adds to our strategies for improving the math curriculum across the district.
Yeah, I read the 6141. It makes sense to do it, and I think Trudy, you and your staff, you guys have done a great job with it, and it's certainly the right thing to do. And I would move that we adopt it and accept the Algebra 1 proposal that's presented.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, thanks, Gretchen. Discussion? All right, well, thanks everyone for, a good job. So let's take our vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Approving the course? Thank
Aye.
you. Any opposed? No. All right, that got universal support. That brings us to future business. Again, just wanted to remind all the listeners that Monday, March 29th is the Board of Finance public hearing on the Board of Education budget.
Is that at 7 o'clock, Deb? Or
7 o'clock, it's virtual, and there are links, and as board members, we'll be getting invitations.
Oh, okay.
Because we'll be part of the panel.
Okay, good.
And then our next meeting will not be until after spring break. Are there comments from the public?
No, there are not.
Okay. All right. Is there, we don't need a motion to adjourn. I think Glenn keeps telling me I can just adjourn the meeting. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting. So thank you everyone for a great discussion. Lots of issues tonight, lots of good work.
Yeah.
And again,
Bob O'Donnell, quick question. Do we know anything about Mr. Papa's procedure? What's happening, schedule, timing, or anything? Bob?
I do, Glenn, but I'm not going to talk about it publicly right now.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in touch with him by email today. Yeah.
Okay. And things are going well?
I think he's in a good place. Yeah.
okay.
Fantastic.
All
That's
right, great.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're
Thank you
adjourned.
all.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night. Good night.
Bye, everybody.